What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Last week we did a video where I showed you guys how I used all of my 2025 rookie picks on a contending roster. I told you in that video that this week I would be doing the same thing with a roster that is rebuilding, a much different strategy than that video, less trades, more rookies, all of that good stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Hopefully you guys are excited for that. If this is your first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But other than that, let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about this rebuilding roster. All right, so I'm going to slide over here because I got a couple graphics that I'm going to throw up on the screen. But this league is a league called the Gridiron Gurus. It's a league that's currently entering its third season going into 2025. So we have 2 seasons under the belt, still a very fresh, very new league. I've done a little bit of content on this league before. I've done 2 videos showing you guys the rebuilding trades that have basically got us to draft day so far. So I've done those 2. You'll see those pop up on the screen. It's like 15 trades from the time that we started to decide rebuilding just about a year ago to the time that we are here today. Now, a lot of those trades were kind of trying to get liquid just so we had a lot of draft capital that would gain value over time, and we could use that on younger players to help rejuvenate this roster, because over the course of the last 2 years, I have an overall record of 27-29. Now, that's about a 48% win rate, and the reason why is because I was actually a contending roster the very first season that we were in this league. I had a championship appearance in 2023. Unfortunately, I did not win that championship. I came in second place. The writing was on the wall. It was a dynasty startup that I didn't necessarily love. It was a little bit older, kind of a team that just wanted to go out and get it year one. And there was just a lot of players on that roster that I think overperformed. I had some bad luck with some players who lost some value that year. And despite having that championship appearance, I was very mediocre in the max points for department. So using some of that context clues, you just didn't score that much. You were a little bit of an older roster. You still found yourself in the championship, probably a little bit lucky to be there. So instead of waiting and trying to force a championship contender another year with an aging roster, I said, let's just rip the band-aid off and let's get liquid. Let's retool this roster. Let's rejuvenate it with some youth and try and go out there in 2025, 2026 and potentially be a very, very strong contender for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So thankfully for me, I was able to use the winnings that I had in that second place game to kind of play for free for the next couple of seasons. I think the winnings that I got there paid for the next 2 years. So basically I could tank for free with my buy-ins paid based on those winnings in 2024 and in 2025, and then hopefully we're ready to roll by 2026. So that's one of my favorite strategies. If you have a team that you need to rip the band-aid off and you just got some money from winning a first, a second, maybe a third place, if you guys give money in third place, rip that band-aid off and play for free while you tank. That's the best way to do it, because then you're not paying money to lose. So anyways, giving you guys a little bit about the league settings. This is a 10-team league. It is a super flex league. This is also a league that is full PPR. It's a 1.5 tight end premium, so you get that full PPR for the tight end and then an extra half point for the tight end. It's a 6-point passing touchdown league, and we have a league median. Now what that means is you get to play an extra game every week against a median in the league, so we all have one score that we have to beat. There's 5 teams that get above that score, they get an extra win. The 5 teams that get below that score, they get an extra loss. It's just a way to add some extra games onto it and kind of get rid of a little bit of the variance in fantasy football. It's very fun. I love to do it in my dynasty leagues. It's not necessarily the most popular, but I love to do it. And then we also have 40-man rosters, so it's very, very deep leagues. We have 10 starters, it's 6 taxis, and 24 bench spots. So there's definitely a lot of players on these rosters, and the reasons why we did that is because we wanted to incentivize trading, as well as having the ability to identify very deep gems, diamonds in the rough types of players off the waiver wire as UDFAs after those rookie drafts. But mainly it's to incentivize trading, because that's the only way you can get this roster better if the waiver wire is weak. So that's why we did that, and it's definitely worked out well, because the trade market in there for the last little while has been very good. Maybe wasn't as good as I wanted it to be in the dynasty rookie draft. We'll talk about that later, but it's been very good for the league as well. Now, going into our offseason, going into the rookie draft, I had a total of 13 draft picks on this roster, and that was by liquidating older assets like Aaron Jones, Rashad White, XYZ. We got rid of a bunch of guys for second round picks last year, some extra stuff. What we ended up having going into this draft was the 201, the 203, the 204, the 205, the 207, the 208, and the 209, total of 8 second-round picks. I'll put the next one on the screen so you can see we also had the 210 as well. So we basically controlled the entire second round in this draft. We also had the 307, the 402, the 404, the 504, and the 505. So a total of 13 draft picks, 8 seconds, 1/3, 2/4, and 2/5 going into the draft. Now, because we had all of these picks, my strategy in here as a rebuilding roster, we're not necessarily ready to contend yet. I'll show you the team at the end so you guys can kind of see how good this team is in general based off of the players on the roster. But overall, it was draft the best player available, add as much value to this roster as possible, following my draft board of prospects, my rankings, and make sure that you're drafting the best player no matter the positional need, because there are positional needs on this roster. But just draft best player available, and when this roster is ready to go, fully ready to contend, you can trade some of these assets for positional need at that point in time. But make sure you're just drafting best player available. So let's hop right into it, man. As we got into this draft, we did not have a first round pick. If you guys have watched a couple of those trade videos that I put at the beginning of the video where we talked about those rebuilding trades, I did have a couple first round picks in this year's draft. I had the 104, which was my pick. I had the 108, which was sitting there, and I had the 110. I ended up using those picks this offseason. I've already talked about those trades. That's why they're not in this video, but I used them this offseason to add players like Amon-Ra St. Brown to the roster, Jayden Daniels to the roster, and Ladd McConkey to the roster. So even though we got rid of our first round picks, we added cornerstone assets in Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jayden Daniels, and Ladd McConkey. So I still feel very good about that. But let's get right into it, man. We get into this second round. In the second round, we're on the clock here at the 201. Now, I told you the strategy is just draft best player available. So up to this point, we're in my tier 4 of prospects. You guys see that kind of on the screen. We're sitting here looking at Tyler Warren, Jaxson Dart, RJ Harvey, Colston Loveland, and Matthew Golden. Obviously, we had a couple of those guys come off the board already in Warren and Loveland. So Dart, Harvey, and Golden are the best players available. To me, we could have went Jaxson Dart, but I had a hunch just based on my league mates. That competitive edge right here at the 202 was not going to be going quarterback. I didn't foresee him going Jaxson Dart, so I gambled. I knew he might go RJ Harvey because he liked RJ Harvey. I took RJ Harvey, gambled, made sure I would try and get Jaxson Dart after, and it worked out because he goes Luther Burden, which is great. It was kind of surprising to me. I thought maybe he would go somebody else, maybe a Kaleb Johnson or something like that, but he ends up going Luther Burden, and then we land Jaxson Dart and Matthew Golden here in that 203 and that 204 slot. So basically going in my tier 4, the best players available, Jaxson Dart, RJ Harvey, and Matthew Golden, and we end up landing all 3 of those guys. Harvey, obviously a player that's risen a lot. Jaxson Dart, I think there's a lot of value insulation that can occur with a pick like that, because even though we don't necessarily need quarterback on this roster, he's best player available, and if he starts for the New York Giants here sometime in the future, even this year where he's maybe not playing and not scoring points for our fantasy football team, which will help us with our 2026 draft pick position, I think this is a player that you can maybe flip for a first round pick down the road, especially if he looks a little bit better in those games where he's starting. Matthew Golden, a first round wide receiver. You just like to draft the first round wide receivers, even if I'm not a big Matthew Golden fan, especially when we're getting him here at the 204. So this was kind of best case scenario for us in this group, this tier here, where we had the 3 best players on our board available, and we landed all 3 of them despite having somebody picking there in between us. Now, we were going to be back up on the clock here at the 205. We also had the 207, 208, 209, and 210 loading up because we had all of those second round picks. At the 205, there was only a couple players here in this tier that I felt like we should go with. It was Luther Burden, Kaleb Johnson, and Jayden Higgins. That was my tier 5 of prospects. Again, going best player available, I go Kaleb Johnson here at the 205, and then lucky for us, Hello Panda goes 206, Shedeur Sanders. So sitting at that 207, we grab another player that we had in our tier 5 best player available, and that gives us Jayden Higgins of the Houston Texans, who was drafted very, very early, day 2. So we are now 17 picks into the draft. We have multiple of our top 15, top 16 type of players in this year's rookie class, and we've added a little bit of extra talent at the quarterback position, the running back position, the wide receiver position. We're kind of getting a mix of guys, and I'm feeling very good about this draft. However, I know that I have a tier break here going into the 208. So going into the 208, as you can see, we're moving into my tier 6. I have Trey Harris, Cam Skattebo, Bhayshul, Tuten, Jack Besh, and Jalen Milroe. I decided I want to kind of start offering some trades here. I've made the selections that I wanted to make, but let's see what the market is like. I want to reach out to some of these managers in the league and see how the rookie fever is going. Maybe see if some guys have FOMO. They want to come in and grab a guy like Skattebo, get Trey Harris, because at the end of the day, I want to add a little bit of proven talent to this roster, and it would be ideal if some of that talent is also young. So I start going out, hitting the phones, trying to make offers for guys like Jameson Williams, Jayden Reed, Josh Downs, Dalton Kincaid, maybe guys like Ricky Pearsall, George Pickens as well. There was a whole grouping of guys that I had there that I knew I wanted to target. I went out and sent offers for a bunch of them, just trying to get my draft picks off, go get a couple young guys. And unfortunately, the trade market was very, very stale. Now, I think this is because the draft had been going very, very slow up to this point. This was by far my slowest rookie draft of any league that I was in. We had 12-hour clocks, which is fine. I don't mind if you use the clock, but I think when it's going very slow, people start to get less excited about the draft. It becomes more of an annoyance for certain people. I don't mind. That's what the clock is for. If you need to use it to hit the phones and make trades, fine. But there were people in our league chat that were pretty annoyed with how long the draft was taking. Guys were using 6-7 hours of a clock, and it just was going very, very slow. So I think because of it going slow, people kind of checked out of that draft and they were just waiting for their pick to get up on the clock so they could make their selection and move on just to get it over with. It's a little bit unfortunate because I think it kind of hurt my ability to flip some of these picks and make a profit. However, I didn't feel like these players here in Trey Harris and Skattebo and Tuten, who were my next three guys off the board, were bad players. I thought they were fine players, and I'm definitely willing to just draft them anyways as best players available. And then if something happens where they start looking good in the future, they start popping off early, you can flip those players down the road. You know, just because I made the selection doesn't mean it's gone and it's wasted. There's still going to be opportunities for me to flip these players down the road, and just adding the depth to the roster, it's fine. But it was a little bit unfortunate that the trade market was so stale and people really weren't checked into the draft because of how slow this draft was going. But at the end of the day, what can you do about it? You just have to react and just kind of maneuver around this market. So we'll see if we can flip some of these guys down the road when they start getting these, you know, hype pieces from rookie mini camps and OTAs and training camps and maybe look good on the NFL field. We'll kind of be active in the trade market at that point, but we just weren't able to take advantage of that in the rookie draft due to how slow this draft was. So that's just kind of my disclaimer there. It's fine. At the end of the day, you know, we just are going to maneuver. So the draft goes on. I decide basically at that point, because I couldn't get anybody to bite on seconds, I'm probably not going to be able to get anybody to bite on thirds and fourths and fifth round picks. So let's just buckle in, keep drafting best player available, and we can maneuver later at a later date. So down the draft board we go. Bhayshul comes off at 301. You know, this whole third round kind of goes, and our next pick is the 307. Very lucky for us, I had Jalen Milroe sitting here in my tier 6 as my 21st overall player and my quarterback 3 in my rankings, and we get him at the 307. So that was kind of a blessing, kind of lucky. Like I said with Jaxson Dart, you know, drafting a quarterback, even though it's not a need on my roster with a player like Milroe, if he becomes the starter and the rushing upside is there and he's scoring the fantasy football points, I can flip him down the road for much more than I used to draft him today. So it's another piece on this roster that can see some value insulation and grow in value over time. So I'm very excited about that one as well. And let's go on to the fourth round, man. We get to the fourth round up at the 402, and we have now moved into my tier 7 of players. There's guys in this tier like Kyle Williams, Jalen Knoll, Mason Taylor, Dylan Sampson, Jayden Blue, Elijah Arroyo, and Shador Sanders. That's kind of my tier 7. We end up grabbing tight end here, Elijah Arroyo. It's a decent need on the roster, so it kind of fit best player available plus need, so we grab him. And then here at the next pick, we get Jayden Blue at the 404, so I went with that. The reason why I go Arroyo over Blue is because I did have that need tiebreaker. Players in the same tier, but I did have the need at tight end, just leaned Arroyo, and then lucky enough, we were still able to grab Jayden Blue here. Jayden's very interesting to me. He's a player that's been rising up my draft board basically since the NFL draft. He was a player that I did not have in my top 50 going into the NFL draft, and then coming out of my top 50, I mean, you look at where he's at, he's number 26. So yeah, big riser for me. I'm excited to see what he does with some of the opportunity there, with the only competition currently being on the roster of Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. So that kind of takes us to the fourth round. You know, we had guys like Taj Brooks, Tyler Shuck, Devin Neal, all of these players come off the board, and now we get into fifth round territory where I said I had a couple of those loaded up. We're really just drafting for taxi squad and or maybe guys who can get some value this year that I can flip down the road. My plan with the thirds is like, if you can get a player who looks valuable and you can flip him for a second or a third round pick because of the role that he has, maybe a second's a little bit too much, but if you can get a third round pick in the future, that's just value that you're stacking on top of it. Use a fifth, get a good player, flip it for a third, use that third, you know, the kind of, it goes on and on. You guys see how it is. So we get into that fifth round, and obviously, like I said, we're just drafting these taxi players. So I get Kyle Monangai here for the Chicago Bears. players. Maybe he can hit that David Montgomery role, maybe not. Maybe it's Roschon Johnson. I don't know. We'll see. They need a bruiser, somebody on the goal line. It's not DeAndre Swift, so we'll see what happens with him. I also get Brashard Smith, maybe a dart throw option, somebody who gets worked in next to Isaiah Pacheco, because the only other competition on the roster is guys like Kareem Hunt and Elijah Mitchell, which maybe Brashard Smith's a little bit better than them, and then everybody else kind of just takes the running backs. So if you guys saw my last video, I like just taking the rookie running backs there in that 5th round. There's just so many of them. You can take so many of them and find a pathway where maybe they can find some relevancy. So that's what we end up doing there. But I told you guys I would show you guys the roster. So let's look at the roster now after this rookie draft. We went into it with 13 picks. We used 13 of those picks on rookies, unfortunately, just due to that stale trade market, but we can flip some of them down the road. Targeted some players, best player available, players we felt like could get some value insulation. But you see what we have here. This is a roster that has Jayden Daniels, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy. Adding the rookies of Jaxson, Dart, and Jalen Milroe to it definitely makes you feel like you have some value insulation there, where you can maybe get some extra draft capital down the road if you want to flip those guys. We were very weak at running back. I've always been very weak at running back there when I'm rebuilding, because having that running back points on the roster isn't beneficial, and rostering running backs in a long-term rebuild not beneficial. But this draft, we added a lot of talent here. Kaleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, Cam Skattebo, Bhayshul, Tuten, Jayden Blue, even guys like Monogany and Brashard Smith. So we get those guys on the roster. As you saw before, the only guy there was Isaiah Davis. He was the only running back we had on the roster from last year. Now, outside of that, we had Amon-Ra St. Brown on the roster, Ladd McConkey, Jordan Addison, Chris Olave. You add a guy like Matthew Golden to the roster, Jaden Higgins to the roster, Trey Harris to the roster. Pair them with guys like Ayuk, Shakir, Michael Pittman, Jalen McMillan. There's a lot of talent on this roster, and I think as we get closer and closer to contending, we can consolidate some of these pieces, get rid of some of the depth, and upgrade to better superstars that we can put into our starting lineup. And then at the tight end position, like I said, we're a little bit weaker there, and I don't like having elite running backs when I'm rebuilding. I build around the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, and as you can see, first in quarterbacks, first in wide receivers, those are the weak points of the roster. But Jake Ferguson, Pat Freiermuth, now Elijah Arroyo. You'll notice there's a couple other rookies that I picked up off of waivers, guys like Isaiah Bond, Gunnar Helm, LaQuinn Allen, Phil Maffa. There's guys that I picked up off the waiver wires, but I'm looking at this roster and it says we are fraud, which is fine. You know, we're not necessarily trying to contend right now, but we are 23.7 years old, average age, very young, the #1 overall roster from a value standpoint, which is definitely what we like to see. We got to get some more guys who are going to win now, but that can come over time. I just like what we have here. You know, we'll see what happens over the next couple of seasons. And as well as this draft class, you see next year we have 3 26 first round picks, we have 3 26 second round picks, a couple thirds. We can go in and add even more talent next year. I think going into 2026, after those rookie picks are made, or after we trade those rookie picks for proven studs, I think at that point we will be one of the best, if not the best, contending roster in this league. Hopefully going to be in a competitive window with maybe just a couple other teams in there for the next 2, 3, 4 years. But I think we got the bones set up with Jayden Daniels, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, Amon-Ra, Ladd McConkey, Jordan Addison. Hopefully some of these running backs develop in RJ Harvey, Kaleb Johnson, and we can flip them or use them. There's a lot to like here, I think. And you guys let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think this roster has the potential to be a strong contender? Do you think it has the bones, the foundation set up right now? Or do you think that this roster is still a few years away? Is it 2027 where we're competing? 2028? I think we might be closer to 2026, but you guys let me know in the comments down below. But either way, that is how we used all 13 of those picks. Maybe not by choice, but we made them nonetheless. And I think this is a very interesting roster. I just wanted to share with you guys from a rebuilding lens. All right, so there you have it. That is how I used all 13 of those picks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't watched the contending video that I did for that team, make sure to go check that one out. That one was very fun as well. There's lots of trades in that one because we were maneuvering through that draft a lot, making a lot of trades in that draft, moving up, moving down, moving out. So make sure you go check that one out. There was not a lot in this one, obviously, but a lot of rookies that we added to the roster. If you like this type of content, you want more of this content, make sure you are subscribed. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers. We want to get there with your help, so make sure you hit that button. If you like today's content, found something informative, entertaining, actionable, you just like the video, you think it's good quality, and you want more of it in your subscription feed, make sure you hit the like button. It is the best free way to show this channel some support, and it helps us out a ton, so make sure you hit that like button for us. And last but not least, make sure you go join our free Discord. Like I said at the beginning of the video, you guys voted on 2 separate videos. This is part 2. You get to vote on things like that. Give me information that you have about your fantasy football teams. Get some advice from me talk to 400 plus different people in that Discord every day, maybe even submit some Dynasty trades for review on one of our Dynasty trade shows. There's lots of cool perks in that Discord. It's free to join. There is no risk in doing that, so make sure you go do that for me if you're not a member of that Discord. And with all of that out of the way, I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.